The flames weren't the worst part. It was the silence that followed. Marine veteran Jake Morrison had learned to sleep light, too light. Some nights, the creak of floorboards sent him bolt upright. Heart hammering, hand reaching for a weapon that wasn't there anymore. His therapist called it hypervigilance. Jake called it Tuesday. But that October night, when Ranger, his Belgian Malinois and former military working dog, jolted, awake with a low, urgent whine, Jake knew something was genuinely wrong. The dog's ears stood rigid, his body trembling with an intensity Jake had only seen overseas. "What is it, boy?" Ranger bolted to the window of their small studio apartment. Pawing frantically at the glass, Jake stumbled after him, squinting into the darkness of their modest Philadelphia neighborhood. That's when he saw it, orange light flickering against the night sky, 2 buildings down. The old Victorian house, the one with the purple shutters that always made him smile during his morning runs. The one where the little girl with pigtails lived, the one who always waved at Ranger. Jake didn't remember grabbing his shoes. Didn't remember racing down 3 flights of stairs with Ranger at his heels. His body moved on autopilot, muscle memory from a life that felt both distant and viscerally present. By the time he reached the street, smoke was pouring from the second-floor windows. A small crowd had gathered, cell phones glowing as they called. 911, someone shouted that the fire trucks were coming. Jake scanned the faces, neighbors in bathrobes, a teenager recording video, an elderly man praying. But he didn't see the little girl. Didn't see her mother. Anyone inside? Jake's voice cut through the chaos. "The mom's at some business conference," a neighbor stammered. "New York, I think. But Emma, the little girl, she should be up there. The babysitter ran out, said she couldn't get to the bedroom." Jake didn't wait for the rest. He was already moving toward the house when a hand grabbed his arm. "You can't go in there, man. The fire department's coming." Jake met the man's eyes with a look that made him release his grip. Ranger was already at the front door, scratching, ready. They'd done this before in different deserts, different fires. The mission was the same: bring them home. The heat hit Jake like a physical wall when he kicked through the door. Smoke filled his lungs, acrid and thick, triggering memories of burning vehicles and desperate evacuations. He dropped low, pulling his shirt over his mouth. Ranger stayed close, his training overriding every natural instinct to flee. "Emma," Jake's shout dissolved into coughing. "Emma, can you hear me?" The stairs groaned under his weight, each step an act of faith. The second floor was worse. Flames crawled across the ceiling, hungry and alive. 3 doors. Jake tried the first, empty. The second, a bathroom. His eyes were streaming, his lungs burning. He could hear sirens now, distant but approaching. Ranger barked, sharp and insistent, at the 3rd door. Jake tried the handle, locked from the inside. He could hear it now. Underneath the roar of the fire, a child's terrified whimpering. "Emma, honey, step back from the door." Jake threw his shoulder against it once, twice. On the 3rd hit, it splintered open. Through the smoke, he saw her, small, curled in the corner by her bed, clutching a stuffed rabbit. She was maybe 6 years old, her eyes wide with terror. Ranger reached her first, pressing his body against hers, licking her face. The dog's presence seemed to break through her paralysis. She looked up at Jake, and in that moment, he wasn't a stranger. He was hope. "I've got you, sweetheart. Put your arms around my neck." She was so light, so impossibly fragile. Jake wrapped her in the blanket from her bed and held her against his chest. Ranger led the way back, his sense of direction uncanny even in chaos. The stairs were fully engulfed now. Jake took them 2 at a time, feeling the wood beginning to give way under his boots. They burst through the front door as the fire trucks rounded the corner, Emma coughing but alive, Ranger barking triumphantly. Paramedics swarmed immediately, pulling the little girl from Jake's arms, checking her vitals, administering oxygen. Someone threw a blanket over Jake's shoulders. His hands were shaking, whether from adrenaline or smoke inhalation. He couldn't tell. Someone kept calling him a hero. Jake didn't feel like one. He felt like a man who'd done what anyone should do, what his training demanded, what his heart couldn't ignore. In the controlled chaos, he slipped away. That's what he always did. 3 hours later, Jake was back in his apartment, scrubbing soot from Ranger's coat, when someone knocked on his door. His neighbor stood there, looking stunned. "There's a woman downstairs asking for you. Says she's Emma's mother." And dude, she showed up in a car that cost more than my house. Catherine Chen had been in the middle of her keynote speech at the International Business Summit when her phone buzzed. As CEO of TechVision Innovations, she'd built an empire on staying composed under pressure. But when she saw the notification, fire at home address, child safe. Call immediately, her composure shattered. She'd left mid-sentence, her assistant scrambling to explain to a ballroom of confused executives. The 90-minute drive from Manhattan to Philadelphia felt like an eternity. When she finally held Emma at the hospital, her baby, her whole world, alive and safe, Catherine Chen, broke down in a way she hadn't since her own mother died. The nurses told her everything. The veteran from down the street, the military dog, the impossible rescue. By the time Emma was cleared to leave, Catherine had made a decision. She found Jake's address through the fire chief. Now she stood in front of his door. This man who looked younger than she expected, with kind eyes and shoulders that carried weight she could only imagine. "Mr. Morrison? I'm Catherine Chen, Emma's mother." Jake nodded, suddenly aware of his stained t-shirt, his bare feet. Ranger trotted over, tail wagging. "How is she?" "Alive. Because of you." Catherine's voice cracked. "Because of you, I still have my daughter." She held out an envelope. "This is... I don't want money." Jake's response was immediate, almost harsh. "Please listen." Catherine's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "This check represents every dollar amount I could think of, and it still doesn't feel like enough. You gave me everything." Jake looked at the envelope, then at this woman who'd driven through the night, still in her business suit, exhausted and grateful and desperate to do something, anything, that felt adequate. "I did what anyone would do." "But you're not anyone." Catherine's words came fast now, passionate. "You're someone who ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. You're someone who saw a child who needed help and didn't hesitate. That's not anyone, Mr. Morrison. That's exceptional." Jake felt something crack in his chest. How long had it been since someone had seen him, really seen him, as something other than broken? How many job interviews had ended with awkward silences? How many times had he wondered if the best parts of him had been left overseas? "I'm just a guy with a good dog," he said quietly. But he took the envelope. Inside was a check with more zeros than Jake had seen outside his student loan statements. Underneath it, a note in elegant handwriting. "For saving my Emma, for being the hero she needed, for reminding me that goodness still exists in this world." But there was something else, too, a business card with Catherine's personal cell number, and a handwritten message. "My company needs security consultants. People with training, courage, integrity, please call me. Not because you have to, because I believe people like you deserve second chances. And I'd be honored to help you find yours." That's how Jake Morrison, the veteran who thought his best days were behind him, found his way forward. Not through a check, though he used it to get proper PTSD, treatment and veterinary care for Ranger, but through a connection. A reminder that one moment of courage could ripple outward in ways he'd never imagine. 6 months later, Jake stood in TechVision's headquarters, wearing a suit instead of soot, training their security team. And every Sunday, he had dinner at Catherine and Emma's new house, where a little girl with pigtails still waved hello, and a good dog still stood watch. Some heroes wear capes, some wear combat boots, and sometimes they just need someone to believe they're worth saving too.